Why does communism differ so greatly in theory and practice? Why have communist countries promoting equality being cruel and authoritarian? Why are communist regimes perceived as evil? Introduction. Communism as a political economical ideology has profoundly shaped the modern world. In theory, it promises a classless society where resources are distributed according to need, fostering equality and eliminating exploitation. However, the practical implementation of communism in countries like the Soviet Union and China has often resulted in authoritarianism, widespread suffering, and the suppression of dissent. The stark contrast between theory and practice raises critical question. Why does communism diverge so significantly from its theoretical ideas? Why have communist states, despite preaching equality, often been cruel and dictatorial towards their citizens? And why are those regimes frequently labeled as evil? Today we explore those questions through historical analysis, examine the mechanism behind those discrepancies and their implication. Theoretical foundation of communism. Communist theory, primarily developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, envisioned a utopian society based on the following principle. Abolition of private property. The means of production are collectively owned, enabling classes distinction. Classless society, wealth and power redistribution, hierarchical social hierarchies. Distribution according to need. Individuals contribute based on the ability and receive resources as needed. Dictatorship of the proletariat, a transitional phase where the working class hold political power to suppress the bourgeoisie and establish socialism. This principle aims to create an equitable society free from exploitation. However, Marx also noted that the transition from capitalism to communism would require a revolution, which could sow the seed for the authoritarian tendency in practice. The Soviet Union, from idealism to repression. The Soviet Union, the first state to implement communist principle, exemplified the gap between theory and practice. Centralized power. Following the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, violent non-communist party consolidated power through secret police and terror to suppress the opposition. Note that the party maintained control through strict surveillance and repression. Stalin's regimes. Joseph Stalin's leadership marked the height of the totalitarianism. His policy, including forced collectivization, purge, and the Gulag system, resulted in millions of deaths and widespread oppression. This Stalin among the most brutal modern dictator. Suppression of dissent. The Communist Party used agencies like Cheka and later the KGB to eliminate opposition, imprisoning or executing political rival, intellectual and ordinary citizen without trial. The UNC highlights the pervasiveness of the system even after Stalin's death. Economic failure. While the Soviet economy achieved initial industrialization, electrical efficiency, shortage, and stagnation over time. Botanica attributes the Soviet collapse party partly to economic mismanagement. This factor demonstrates how the Soviet Union's pursuit of a communist ideal developed into authoritarianism and cruelty, far from the promised equality. The Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. In China, Mao Zedong's the Communist Party also diverged significantly from the hierarchical ideals, particularly during the Great Leap Forward 1958 to 1962 and the Cultural Revolution 1966 to 1976. Great Leap Forward, this campaign aimed to rapidly transform China into an industrial powerhouse by mobilizing farmers into communists. Unrealistic production target, forced labor, and poverty confiscation led to catastrophic consequences. Britain estimated 20 to 30 million deaths from the famine, while the Association for Asian Study called it one of the history's worst famine, largely preventable. Cultural Revolution. Mao launched this movement to purge capitalism and traditional elements, consolidating his authority. Riots persecuted intellectual dissidents and alleged counter-revolutionaries, causing millions of deaths, imprisonment, or re-education assignments. Botanica described it as a period of profound social, political, and economical turmoil that nearly destroyed the Communist Party. Authoritarian control. Both periods reflect Mao's centralized power, sidelining collective decision-making. Stanford FSI notes Mao's rejection of moderate economy policies as a driver of those extreme measures. This event highlights China's implementation of communism as marked by cruelty and authoritarianism, contradicting the visions of egalitarian society. Reason for discrepancy. The divergence between communist theory and practice can be attributed to several factors. Revolutionary necessity and establishing and maintaining communist state often requires suppressing opposition, leading to authoritarian measures like secret police, purges, and censorship, which contradict democratic ideological rigidity action. Strict adherence to Marxist-Leninism doctrines often justify oppressive actions, with leaders like Stalin and Mao framing dissent as a threat to the revolution. Wikipedia notes the Chinese Communist Party emphasizes on people's democratic dictatorship, rejecting Western democratic models. Code of personality. Leaders like Stalin and Mao cultivate personal worship, centralized power, and staff opposition, fostering dictatorship. The strategies highlight how party leaders rely on control to survive. Economic failure. Communist economic systems such as Soviet collapsation and China Great Leap Forward often lead to famine and hardship, necessitating harsh control to maintain stability. Investipedia detail the Great Leap's devastating impact. Lack of democratic institutions. Communist states typically lack a mechanism for checks and balance, such as an independent judiciary, free medians, or multi-party systems, allow leaders uncheck power and enable authoritarianism. While equality leads to cruelty and dictatorship, despite promoting equality, communist states frequently resorted to secret police and terror to suppress dissent and maintain power. The Soviet Gulag systems and the China Cultural Revolution caused millions of deaths and immense suffering. Repeat this. Now the Stalin's use of secret police and labor camps with over 1.05 million deaths is likely stemmed from the post-revolutionary power struggles and the fear of dissent, undermines the realizations of democracy and freedom. Why perceived as an evil regime? Communist regimes are often labeled evil due to their records of mass repression, human rights abuse, and economic failure, such as the Soviet Purge and China's Great Leap famine. However, this perception is debated, vary by culture and political perspective. The U.S. Department of State views the Chinese Communist Party as a threat to global peace. Evidence suggests those regimes fail to deliver on equality often and social and undermining social injustice. So conclusion, the significant gap between the communist theory and the practice arises from the challenge of implementing ideological systems in complex reality, despite promise of equality and freedom from the exploitation. Historical communist states like the Soviet Union and China become cruel and authoritarian due to centralized power, ideological rigidity, and economic failure. Understanding this discrepancy is crucial for critically assessing the legacy of a communist regime and the ongoing relevance in the modern world. Thank you so much.